When the great Yankee slugger Joe DiMaggio was going to retire and he announced that, people were saying, "Say it ain't so, Joe." I think that phrase, "say it ain't so, Joe," will apply to what we're going to talk about in this segment that I find highly disturbing. And that has to do with the birth rate and the implications we're going to go through for the birth rate. And we're also going to look at some of the reasons behind the American birth rate. It's not uniquely an American phenomena, but this is going to come to you from an American perspective. My name is Dave Hodges. I'm the host of the Common Sense Show. We are the show that is freeing America one enslaved mind at a time. We defend God, family, country in that order. We're decidedly Christian. You don't need to be to come here, but we hope that eventually you would join us in our faith. And we also have a special place in our hearts for the oppressed. And many times we take up causes and cases in that situation. And those of you who have followed us for years know that that's the case. This show was born on taking up the cause of the oppressed. It just happened to be me and 300 of my neighbors. Anyway, we are brought to you by a great sponsor. And I'm telling you, if you sit pat on the economy right now, you are getting destroyed. You're having money literally stolen away from you because of the inflation tax. When you're getting 0.1% on your passbook savings, yet that bank will turn around and loan that money out at 8, 10, 12, 15%. So they're doing fine. The inflation doesn't really hit them the same way it hits you. Real inflation is probably 5 to 6% because they don't count the price of gas or food, like you don't have to drive to work or eat. Well, we know it's not 2 or 3% like what they're saying. And even if it was, you're still getting killed. Now, your retirement accounts are tied to the bank in many cases, 401ks, IRAs. You're losing money. And if the banks are ever distressed, they can keep your retirement accounts. Dodd-Frank 2010, UCC Code Section 8. And they can also bail in or take your savings. Why risk that? Leave operating capital in the bank so you can function in society, but then preserve the rest of your wealth. Look for some place to diversify that will be a counter to inflation. And what is that? Well, gold has held its value for 6,000 years. Now, there's never any guarantee in any transaction, but I'm telling you, I would never have a retirement associated with the bank. I've had a 9 year plus relationship as a customer with Noble Gold. I speak from experience. And just look at these numbers real quick before we close. $2.5 billion handled in retirement. 16,000 investors have chosen them to handle this situation as I described. 4.9 stars rated by hundreds of satisfied customers and more than 20 years of helping. And they have American-based customer help, and they are trained not to push you into anything. It's their training. You literally will have to close your own deal. And they are featured in major media, Fox, Forbes, CNBC, Business Insider, and so forth. This is really a quality organization, and I've been advertising for them for over 10 years. Call 877-646-5347. Have a discussion. Just see if you can do better than you're doing now. Because right now, to do nothing is to continue to erode your wealth that you've earned. 877-646-5347. I want to read to you briefly some scripture here that is, I believe, relevant to what we're going to talk about. Genesis 1:28, and God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. When the UN came out with that perverted Agenda 21 uh, paradigm that man did not have dominion over the earth, it was in complete violation of this verse. I won't go into the specifics of that because really the Agenda 21 slash Agenda 2030 climate change initiatives have fallen by the wayside in honor of the data centers. I mean, it's kind of funny how that went away when the tech bros got involved. Genesis 9:1, and it says, And God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Okay, it's pretty clear. You got to have people and you want to increase your population so you can increase opportunities. We'll get to the opportunities in a second, but let me read to you the history of the birth rate in America. Before the 1960s, American families averaged 7 kids per family. You're saying, whoa, yeah. People can't even imagine that today. By 1965, the birth rate had declined to 2.9, but that's still healthy. For a country to maintain itself, it has to maintain a birth rate of 2.1 or higher. Okay, so the 2.95, that was still a positive. By 1980, we reached the critical level, kind of like the Hoover Dam with water, right? It was 1.8. In other words, 1.8 kids born to a family. Now you're saying, Dave, how do you get a 0.8 kid? I actually get people to ask me that question. If you understand statistics, it's a numerical average. We're not talking 80% of a formed human being, but it's 1.8 on the average, and that is the critical point of departure because demographics, sociology, demographics have shown the same thing. A nation has never come back from economic decline when the population rate is less than 1.8. By the way, the worst in the world in the modern industrial world is Italy at 1.2. They're toast. They're cooked. This is why they've allowed, up until recently, untold immigration. I'll get to that question in just a second. Now, would you care to guess what the birth rate is today? Well, as of 2025. Any guesses? 1.8 would be a gift. It's 1.6. We're at the point of no return. Now, records can be broken, trends can be reversed, and maybe we can do something about this. But the old idea of be fruitful and multiply, good biblical advice, and the demographics bear it out, but it's not happening here in America. Now you're saying, well, Dave, we've had huge numbers of immigrants. Yeah, and we're lied to about the amount. I remember under the entire Reagan Bush administration, we have 11 million. And it was like 11 million for 10 years. I mean, really, like we're that stupid. But people are busy with their lives and don't pay attention. But the government was lying. I have interviewed so many people from Homeland Security. I've interviewed people from ICE and the Border Patrol, and they're fairly universal. And here are the numbers that you hear: 30 to 50 million. And before you go, oh, no, can't be, this is what the experts are saying. And if you take the time to research what the people who work in this area are saying, not what the mainstream media is saying, you're going to get a completely different number. I mean, the mainstream media now is inching towards 20 million. Okay, 20 million, 30 million, potato. Let me get down to why this is important. Okay, first of all, if we were going to do immigration right, and this could help right the situation, it really could. But if we were to do it right, we should have what my ancestors had on my dad's side of the family. When they came here, they had to go through a 7-year naturalization period. There's nothing wrong with that. And in that naturalization period, they would offer, publicly funded classes in how to speak English, what the Constitution is about, and a little bit about American history. And I used to know people that worked in that field that did that work. It still goes on to some degree, but it's having this much to cover a wave off of the Pacific Ocean onto a beach. Yeah, it's wholly inadequate what we have now. It's just like the asylum courts. We have people that need legitimate asylum from political persecution in other countries, and we don't have the means to process them because we don't have the numbers. And you have to ask yourself, and then I'm going to step aside and look at analysis for a second. Who benefits from this process where people come in undocumented, get to stay, they're not incorporated into society, they're not on a 7-year naturalization period to become a citizen, where on the 7th year they have to demonstrate some English fluency, historical knowledge, constitutional awareness, right? And that they swear a loyalty oath to the United States. Okay, that would be in the 7th year. Well, we still have that process on the books, but the problem is we're not enforcing it. And who benefits from this? Well, the last thing a corporation wants that's paying below market wages, doesn't have to cover unemployment, pay Social Security, or any of these employee taxes. They don't want people that eventually will become citizens because, see, those people won't go to HR with a work violation. They can work under horrendous conditions and be treated like absolute garbage, which I maintain has happened a lot in this country, courtesy of the corporations. It's inhuman. These people are human beings. They are children of God, regardless of whether they come here or not, they're entitled to good treatment. And we could be incorporating them into our system where they could become productive Americans, just like my father's side of the family became very productive Americans. But we don't do it because it doesn't benefit the corporate needs. Now, here's what's interesting about the birth rate. For immigrants across the board, the average birth rate is 5.4 per family. Go, wow, this is really good. Yeah, be fruitful and multiply. And now, if you incorporate in the system, second generation research of this group shows that their kids are better educated, they're more literate in the English language, know the customs better, know how to navigate the culture and the job market. And the second generation typically does a lot better when given the opportunity. And now you start fixing this problem. Okay, that's just part of the problem. If the immigration corrections are just one side of the coin. Flip the coin over, you've got another side of this. There are things right now that are discouraging, which you'd almost call indigenous Americans, people, who were born and raised here, from having kids, and they're not. Look at our marriage rates are way down. Our divorce rates are up. Our childbearing, as we've indicated, at 1.6 birth rate, that's way down. And you have to ask yourself why. Well, one of the reasons, and some of you are going to be offended when I say this, and I make no apologies, feminism. Okay? In other words, mocking motherhood. Oh, I'm not saying barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. Okay, that's people's default position whenever you bring this topic up. What I'm talking about is wanting to be a mom, wanting to raise kids, and if you have to balance with career, then you balance with career. That happens. And many women navigate that very successfully. But there is an element in our society that basically says, no, who needs men? And that was the feminist movement. Now, the feminist movement did correct some abuses or it never would have gained traction. The workplace was historically unfair to women. Firing a woman because, well, she got married, she might get pregnant, we'll lose time, so we'll just get rid of her. That was wrong. Today, that's illegal. It wasn't illegal before. And women being denied opportunity. My older sister, when she started college, wanted to major in business administration. She was told no, and she asked the college counselor, why not? Because you're a woman. Okay, well, those things needed to be corrected. I agree. But the feminism as a whole that downplays and degrades the family, motherhood, is a problem. It's a huge problem. And what we're seeing here is another effect. It's called the economy. The economic situation in this country is causing families to delay childbearing and child rearing because they can't afford it. Just like the average person now can't afford a house. It was not too long ago when the starter home was $64,000 and now it's over 130. Okay, well, this is now outpriced a lot of the young market. So what do? They work at second jobs. They try to save money. They still want to live the American dream, at least until this latest generation, and they're disillusioned with it and they're quitting on it. But up until that time, you had people delaying marriage for these economic reasons. This is terrible. And then student loans, those who are going through college and 40 years later, they're still paying off their student loan. Yet the economic factors come into play, and I've only mentioned the surface. Haven't anyway exhausted the economic concerns. We have a society that is not family oriented, does not care about families, doesn't protect families. The Europeans are a whole lot better with family leave policies and so forth. And I'm not a socialist, but it's just like the old industrial age before the unions. They'd make women laborers work when they were pregnant until the day they drop. And then the next day you had to be back on the assembly line. I don't know anything more inhumane than that. So we have real problems. And so we need to be focusing on what's good for families. And we're not. Well, how do you get to that point? Let me just bundle this up into one simple solution. You don't have to convince some people, sociologists know this, family is the fundamental building block of society. But the group you don't have to convince of what I'm saying are Christians who truly understand the Word of God. And what I would say to you very simply is this, is that if you keep electing non-Christians You're going to get a non-Christian society that denigrates the family, and then we end up in crisis. Now, let's talk about what's going to happen going forward. Those of you in your 50s, let me ask you a question. Do you think your Social Security is going to be there? Are there going to be enough workers to push it through? It's set to go broke in 2032. Do I think that it'll go broke? No, because I would lead a tax rebellion. I'd say if they're not going to keep their contract for what you paid into for a lifetime, then we don't keep the contract of paying taxes. Okay, they don't want that confrontation. So that's not going to happen. So what's going to happen? You're going to have drastically reduced medical benefits. Hey, you're old, go ahead and die anyway. And then they're also going to reduce benefits. Well, heck, we've already got people on fixed income that can't pay increased property taxes because of home inflation. You get where this is going, right? Okay. Now, what's the cause of it? People that don't care about people, people that don't value families. Who does value families? Christians. Be fruitful and multiply. So, what we need to be doing right now, without hesitation, is to make sure that who you're voting for is a Christian. And I'm not voting for the lesser of two evils because you get the lesser of two evil people. I'm not going to do that. If you have to write in candidates to start sending a message, but this has to become a grassroots national movement. And I don't know that we need to organize a chair and get a website. I don't think we just need to have collective consciousness that, hey, this is what we need to do to save our country. Because what we're doing right now by putting hedonistic, money-driven politicians into office, this is where we're at, $40 trillion in debt. We can't even hardly service the interest on the debt. It's bigger than the defense budget. How long do you think this is going to go on? Oh, wait a minute, maybe it's supposed to. Oh, here's a little conspiracy theory. Who benefits if the dollar goes bye-bye because of this pressure? And don't forget, we're ready to restart the war and the threat of putting ground troops in the war and have a prolonged conflict. What will that do to the economy? Did you know that Buffalo Airport Monday night, ran out of jet fuel, could not refuel? Have you ever heard of that happening? Our oil reserves are at a 40-year low. Well, our needs aren't what they were 40 years ago. So it's situation critical. The economy is only going to get worse. The birth rate's going to continue to go down. And we got people running our lives that don't work from our faith. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you'll talk to your neighbor. You'll have that casual conversation. Well, I'm not voting for anyone that's not a Christian. And you can't worry about the results. Not everyone's going to like what you say. That's okay. Just smile and say, I hope you have a great day. But unless we do this, we'll go down the path of every other hedonistic nation, just like Rome, just like Greece, that fell mostly because they had moral decline. And we're seeing the outgrowth of moral decline. I'm Dave Hodges. This is the Common Sense Show. We'll see you back here again next time. God bless everybody.